name is Don Massat. I'm the founder of the Sacred Journey Institute, and today I'm here to talk to you about CranioSacral therapy. First, before we get into that therapy, I want to emphasize that there are two main goals of the Sacred Journey Institute. One of our goals is to completely take all the limitations off of healing. The other goal of the Sacred Journey Institute is to evolve the human being. That being said, let's talk about CranioSacral therapy, and let's take a little journey back into history and look at some of the key players that helped to evolve CranioSacral therapy. One is William Sutherland. From 1900, he was an osteopath. And William Sutherland, studying as an osteopath, was very interested, in particular, with studying the skull. So, as he studied the skull, he disarticulated bones, and he noticed when he disarticulated bones that the sutures were beveled. And when he saw that the sutures were beveled, to him, the sutures, the bones, were designed for movement. Now, in our history books, and still in our history books, it tells us in our science books that, when a child is born, the skull fuses, and there is no movement. Well, William Sutherland was out to prove that wrong. And what he did, and it's an interesting story, I love to talk about this story. William Sutherland had an office where he practiced osteopathy, and he decided to take old football helmet from that time, which was made of leather, and he took a few leather belts and a couple leather straps, and he strapped them on his head, and he was determined to move a cranial bone. And what would happen if he did move a cranial bone? Well, what happened was Sutherland put this apparatus on his head, tightened up a couple straps, and all of a sudden he would experience maybe vertigo. He was dizzy. Something was happening here, and he created this vertigo. A week later, he tightened the straps on in a different fashion. Again, in his office, nobody's around. And when he tightened them up this time, he developed a migraine headache. A week later, he tried something else, tried to move a different cranial bone. He developed sinusitis. All of a sudden, he's got this sinus problem. Now, what is he doing here? Well, let me tell you what he's doing. William Sutherland knew that if you could move a cranial bone and you could create a symptom, he knew that you could actually remove a symptom by moving a cranial bone. And this was the key to William Sutherland's experiment, and it was really profound. And he took osteopathy and he actually evolved it to another level with CranioSacral therapy. Now, he also, a second part of that story is, while he had the apparatus on in his head and he was doing these experiments, one day, his wife walked in, surprised him, opened the door, and here he's got this stuff on his head tightened up, and she looks at him surprised, shocked, and what is going on here? Well, William Sutherland was truly busted, and he turned to his wife and started to explain his experiments. So anyway, the wife, as she listened carefully to what he was saying, she says, there's something that I've noticed over the last 6 months that you've been doing these experiments, and one thing, I have seen behavior changes in you. Like I've seen hyperactivity, unusual hyperactivity. And on another day, I would see in you like this intense depression. Or another day, I would see this unusual excitement. And it wasn't until later on that we really discovered that emotions had something very powerful to do with moving cranial bones. So, let's step into that in a moment. William Sutherland continued his practice. He developed was cranial osteopathy, and he was utilizing osteopathic techniques to work with backaches, sinusitis, headaches, and they were really like 5 and 10 minute manipulations that he would do, and very successful with it. Now, pretty soon, one of William Sutherland's students, John Upledger, came along. Now, Upledger came along, and he also interested in CranioSacral therapy and very attached to osteopathy techniques, started to work with people on the table for maybe an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. And what John Upledger found, that when you worked on somebody for an hour or an hour 15 minutes, profound things were happening on the table. Techniques weren't producing releases. Releases were happening on their own. Physical, muscular releases, twitches in the arms and legs, just observing on the table while he was sitting with these techniques. And what was happening with Upledger is he was noticing that somebody would go into a deep trance state and something very powerful was happening. What actually was happening in John Upledger's sessions is he was allowing people to surrender into what I call the alpha or theta state. And in that state, it's a very healing state. There's also a concept that we have that all muscles and tissues in our body carry memory and emotions. And when you allow the body to slip into that altered state, the alpha or theta state, what takes over is a self-healing process. And some amazing things happen on the table, and Upledger recognized that. His challenge was, will the medical model have the patience to work with somebody for an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes? And what he found in his frustration was it was very difficult to connect this into the medical model, so he brought it out to the general public. He brought it out to massage therapists. I bet massage therapists would work with somebody for an hour. I bet nurses would work with somebody for an hour. I bet there's people in the general public that would do this work and spend time and work with somebody in that amount of time. And he was very there was much a rebel inside of him as he started to pull away from the what we would call medical model. And as he did, he still kept it in a very structured fashion, his work, and he really kept it very physical so that he would be accepted by the scientific model. Now, a new rebel, a new player, steps on the stage, and this is a student of John Upledger's. His name is Hugh Milne, a Scottish osteopath. Now this osteopath leaves Scotland and he goes to, I think it was South America, to study meditation for like 5 or 6 years. What is up with that? Well, let me tell you what's up with that. Hugh Milne went out to study meditation. What he brought to the stage here was the power of working with people on the table when you are doing your own inner work. Profound. This was huge because now, for the first time, people are starting to recognize connecting with somebody in the field, even outside of the body. Not only that, but what Hugh Milne brings to the table also is tapping into what we call the emotional body. This is something that's really been ignored by the scientific model, working in the physical. The scientific model can address the physical, but they have a hard time measuring the emotional part, so they can't attach it. But this was a key in the evolution. In fact, Hugh Milne talks about all physical problems and all mental health disorders actually have an emotional core to them. Let's take that farther. Let's evolve this and take this farther. So what I did here is I tapped into the physical. Hugh Milne was one of my greatest teachers, I will say. He was incredible. I learned a lot about the emotional body and connecting the emotion to the physical, but what's really another powerful part to this that has not been fully addressed is the spiritual part. And what I've done is to take all the limits off of healing. Let's not get comfortable in the physical or just get comfortable in the emotional body, but let's go into the spiritual realm and take all the limits out and see what we can do as we step into what I call a shamanic approach to craniosacral therapy. Now, what I mean by a shamanic approach is really going in to the evolved human's gifts. Now, this is a gift to work into the physical. It's also a gift to go into the emotional body, and to really do this, we have to go into our empathic abilities as a healer, opening up the heart and working as an empath. Here is where we are connecting. This is where we are communicating. But not only communicating from the heart and opening up our empathic abilities, but to even go outside the body into the field. When I talk about the field, this is where all connection takes place first. Pure connection takes place in the field. And there's unlimited possibilities when we step into field. We can go into the astral. We can go into our channeling abilities, channeling information that isn't even in our books, in our libraries. Profound information, and utilize this information. It exists in our field, and we can communicate and bring this to us. Why stop and suppress these natural gifts we have? And it's not just a few shamans in the mountains that have these visionary gifts. It's actually all of us. It's the core of the evolved human. They're aspects of the evolved human. In our school, we take the students and we start to evolve these gifts. So we take all the limits off of healing. Now, I come from a psychology background, so I come from a different arena than the osteopaths. And what I've done is I've looked at all of these, let's say, disorders and problems that haven't been addressed very well in the physical. And when we look at them, we say, let's say the children, autism and ADHD. Well, I'll tell you, Ritalin and Adderall might control behavior, but it's not solving the problem. These children here that are autistic and the children with ADHD are actually extremely gifted. And when we look at these children, part of their gifts, what I'm talking about here with the evolved human, is their empathic abilities. Now, what happens when you put a child on a medication like Ritalin or Adderall? It suppresses those very gifts. And it's not just anxiety or depression that it's suppressing in the body, or aggressive behavior. It's not just suppressing that, it's suppressing their excitement. It's suppressing their passion, it's suppressing their excitement and their drive. And what we're doing is we're taking the gifts away from these very gifted children. And what we have to do is step into the spiritual work. We have to look at these children in a different way. The system has to change. The school systems have to change. They have to start to address the children in a different way. CranioSacral therapy comes in. It centers these children. It shows them how to release these emotions and move them through from their subconscious and let them go. And helps them to center so that they can just open their empathic abilities and step into their gifts. Let's take another one here, schizophrenia. schizophrenia. It's been known as a death sentence. No cure. The physical, medical model really stumbles with this, and the reason is because it doesn't exist in the physical. It exists outside the physical. There is no belief system for voices in the head. Why does somebody have voices talking in their head? Since it's not a belief system, the struggle over here at the medical model is trying to suppress the voices. For us, we understand why the voices are in the head. It's called miasm. I've studied schizophrenia for years, and we've developed a modality for the first time, miasm release therapy, to work with schizophrenia, mental health disorders, and physical problems. This is huge. One day, this is going to be one of the most major therapies offered out to the world in working with health problems and mental health disorders. Miasm release therapy. So schizophrenia, not only has the physical medical model failed, but they even changed the name. They'll call it identity disorders, they'll call it delusional disorders, they'll put out different names for medications that they've been using before. It doesn't work. The medical model is failing with this. What we have to do is step out of the medical model, evolve, and take the limits off of healing. Healing is not just physical. It's emotional. We need to go into the spiritual part, which is opening up our belief systems and looking in a different way, looking at these people in a different way. Look at the gifts of the schizophrenic. Another one here, cancer, is another one we all know. The medical model has stumbled with that. How much money has been put in cancer foundations? It's beautiful, but they keep doing the wrong thing over and over and over. Chemotherapy is not working. Radiation is not working, hasn't been successful. What we have found here is that vibrational healing therapy has been huge. And it's opening to a different belief system, a belief system that we can heal through vibration. And this is one of the reasons why raising the vibration here of the therapist is so important, because as we raise our vibration, we can raise the vibration of the person on the table. And by raising the vibration, we can actually regenerate cells. It's been proven. It's another way to look at this. Cancer does not have to be terminal. We don't use the word terminal. When the word terminal really only means limited. And what we do is we take off the limitations and we look with a different belief system and we work in a different manner. So, that being said, we've taken a shamanic approach to craniosacral therapy and evolved that using our evolved human gifts. And we're stepping into new modalities: sacred journey therapy, miasm release therapy, vibrational healing therapy. And we got another one, linear time travel, we're working with right now. You'll love it. So I welcome you to the Sacred Journey Institute. This is new work, and if you step into the Sacred Journey Institute, you'll become one of the pioneers of this work, and maybe you'll take it to the next level. I'm Massat, and I thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.